This episode is brought to you by Phoenix Fitness. Check out the link in the description. If you do workouts from home, then Phoenix Fitness has all the equipment that you need. Hello, my name is Clint. You're listening to the LifeShot podcast. Thanks for choosing us, and remember to subscribe to catch all the latest episodes that we're pushing out there. I speak to Claudette Jordan today, and she's a psychiatrist from South Africa. Isn't it a funny idea that we think we know what our 100% optimal performance benchmark is? I don't think we ever know fully what it is, but we do have some kind of intrinsic intuition that tells us whether we are really lagging in performance, as in feeling down and sluggish, or whether we're feeling awake, alive, and full of vitality. So I speak to Claudette today about our relationship to ourselves, our food and our mood, our experiment with food and sleep, and to see how maybe we can feel better. We speak about inflammation as well and how damaging it is to our bodies. And, is fixing yourself a mental thing only, or can you do other things such as meditation or mindfulness and heart-focused breathing in order to change your psychology, in order to change your mental state, and to make yourself feel a little bit more fulfilled, whole, and at peace? Let's dive right in now with Claudette Jordan on the show.
Hey, yo! It's the LifeShot podcast. Change your world and change the world.
My name is Clint. This is the LifeShot podcast. I've got Claudette Jordan, who's a psychologist, with us today. Claudette, welcome.
Thank you, Clint.
And you just I see your posts on Instagram and and all the other social media things, and you're quite inspiring in the things that you post. And I've even seen some videos of you doing some pretty intense workouts. So you're very active in the health and wellness area. So what is the passion that drives you? I mean, why do you do what you do?
Okay, so I think for me, what I find most rewarding about the work that I do with people is that the process of being able to facilitate change for people, that transformation is possible, and to be able to help people through that process of change and to facilitate them with the tools, strategies, ideas, especially when most people come to see a psychologist, they do feel pretty stuck sometimes or overwhelmed by whatever challenges that they're going through. And so it's quite rewarding to be able to walk alongside people and to facilitate change for them.
Do they struggle with relationships to themselves, like how they relate to themselves, if they think they're not good enough, or is it relationships with others that they are battling with? What's the fundamental underlying issues that most people have, if you could generalize?
I think that even if people come presenting with a relational issue, invariably there are contributing factors that are personal to oneself that will impact those relationships. So I think at the end of the day, it does really boil down to your relationship with self, because that determines so much of what you do and how you relate to other people. So even if your challenge that you are going through appears to be a relational one, it's still often invariably very much related to self.
We could talk hours about lots of things related to that, yeah. But today specifically, we want to talk about our relationship with food, I suppose, and the way that food and our gut health makes us, how it makes us feel. So from a psychological point of view as well. Let me ask this question like this. So how does food affect our psychology or our physiology? Like if I ate French fries, burgers every day, and high sugar cereals, and I only bought stuff from the shop for lunch every day, is that gonna hamper me?
I think if I could give a general answer, it would be a definite yes. But I think maybe some people don't realize how much it's affecting them. So, for example, if you're operating at like 50% or 60%, but you're getting through stuff, and you don't know that you could be operating at like a 90% level, and you don't know what that 90% is, you are kind of go through life as if you're doing okay. So for the person who's maybe not experiencing any other problems or issues or challenges of any other kind, they might not feel suboptimum. They might not feel like the way they're eating or what they're doing is impacting them. But it doesn't mean that they're operating at full capacity. So whereas with other people, they clearly can see how their nutrition is having other impacts, like on their productivity, things like their concentration, their memory skills, their ability to work productively, work efficiently, mood, like their irritability or levels of just feeling happy or settled or peaceful. It's a lot more in their awareness. So they might be a lot more aware or experience those symptoms much more than other people might.
So I don't know if it was something in South Africa, but when in the UK here, they spoke a little bit about the diets of children and how they behaved on certain diets. Would you think that we should try and experiment within ourselves to think, okay, what if I tried something different? How would it make me feel? I mean, is that the best way to have a benchmark to say, you know, I was operating at 50, but I didn't know. Now I've tried this and I'm doing better. Is it that experimentation that's needed?
I think it would be a very good exercise for people to experiment, because maybe that's how they would realize that perhaps maybe they don't have as much mental clarity, or they might be feeling a lot more alert or a lot more emotionally light, or, you know, if they did pay attention more to diet. It's like sleep, for example. Most people feel like they're okay on 5 hours of sleep, or they're kind of living life in sort of it feels comfortable for them on 5 hours of sleep. But it's only after they start sleeping for 7 to 8 hours of sleep that they realize just how much of an impact it makes positively in their lives. So I guess it's a similar type of thing with food as well. Yeah. Just because there are certain ways in which certain ingredients react with our bodies that have an effect on how our brain works, and all our hormones and neurotransmitters. So there's definitely something for being more conscious of your nutrition.
So you know how you posted something a while back about how our gut health can have an effect or might lead to was it dementia or Alzheimer's? But it almost seems like people might read that and say, okay, I get that. But then because they don't immediately have the ramifications of a bad diet, they don't change their diet. So I'm just thinking about that psychological switch that sometimes has to happen in order for us to change our diet. I mean, do you work on that for clients, or what would you recommend?
Yeah. You know, one of the things to consider is that if you want to be emotionally well, have good cognitive, that's like mental health, being able to use your brain thinking skills effectively, then these are things to consider for the here and now, not just when you're 50 or when you're 60 or when you're 70. You know, these are all things to be conscious of now. So the post that you're talking about with regards to the Alzheimer's and things is not just only related to that was specific to degenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that. But if you look at the brain as a whole, people can experience that same inflammatory response in the brain in other ways, not just when you're older and your brain starts degenerating, basically. That inflammation in your brain can happen at any age. So children who have symptoms of hyperactivity, for example, people who have symptoms of depression, or people that, you know, have are quite anxious in how they go about their day-to-day lives. All of those seemingly typical psychological conditions can actually be triggered or impacted upon by that same inflammatory process of the gut and the effect on the brain. So these are things to be conscious of, not only for when one gets older, but from as young as kids.
It happens all over our body, right? Not just in the brain. It can happen in our joints. And is it based on the food that you eat, or how does it get down into the different areas?
So inflammation is like an adaptive process in your body. For example, just say you stood on a nail, when you're walking outside and you stood on a nail, then that part of your toe that got pinched by the nail might kind of swell up. Your body sends a whole lot of information to the brain to go and get that sorted out, basically. So it might swell up. It will kind of cover up that area. It might get hot. It might get red. But stuff is happening there. It's both from a protective process, but there's been an area of damage. There's been an area of like a break in the barrier of the body, so to speak. So everything, your body rushes everything there to deal with that kind of breach. So inflammation can be a very adaptive thing, and it's necessary for our bodies to deal with certain conditions, like getting a fever, for example. But where inflammation becomes dangerous for a person's body is the fact if it's ongoing and it's not an adaptive thing, it becomes more destructive. So, I mean, after 3 days, you wouldn't want to still have a blue swollen toe, for example. That would be an indicator that something's wrong, like you've got an infection or something's going on there. That inflammatory response is just an adaptive response for that short period of time to sort out what needs to be sorted out for that small purpose, for that small point in time. But where it comes to the kind of inflammation we're talking about now, like joints and the rest of the part of the body, that's more now triggering or becoming an indicator that something's wrong. Like if 3-5 days later your toe is still hugely swollen, then that's an indicator that there's a problem there. So what happens in our bodies in various parts is that for various reasons, the food that you eat can result in that same inflammatory response. And because what can happen is that inside your gut, their damage can actually take place. So if you're eating things that are inflammatory for you as a person, your gut can get damaged by that. And there's a whole lot of reading up and things that people can do on leaky gut, which is a condition that results in then the barrier of your gut will basically gets destroyed, and then all of those dangerous particles, things can get through. Yes, get through into your bloodstream, and then that crosses the blood-brain barrier and impacts obviously or the environment inside your brain.
You got kids. You got 2 kids. I got 4 kids, and I'm just thinking, how do we? Let's say I'm on a journey to eating more healthy, because sometimes it's a psychological thing. It's something to be disciplined about. It's a choice that you've made for certain reasons. Maybe it's to not be as sick as you were, or maybe it's to lose weight, or to prevent future diseases. Because some people do think, like me personally, I think about, I don't want to get that when I'm older, so I'm eating better now. Some people just want to eat better because they want to lose weight, etc. But if we've got a partner, a husband or a wife, and we got children as well, it's a difficult thing to get them to go on the journey with us sometimes.
Yeah.
So how do we get them to be motivated or share our views if we want to do that and they're not necessarily on the same train as we are?
I think with kids it's a little bit different to like a spouse or a partner. With kids, I find like with my own kids, and depending on your kids' ages, part of it is about getting them involved in the process, like education, teaching them about different foods, different types of foods, what the benefits of foods are, especially when they are at sort of like a preschool. What do you guys call it? Like a kindergarten kind of age?
Yeah.
What do you guys call it? Yeah.
They call it preschool. Yeah.
Preschool. Okay. Where they are very eager to learn about how the world works and about nature, and they're curious. So introducing them to what nutrition is about, what the role of food is in your body. So, for example, my 6-year-old, his terminology for this kind of thing is he would say, I don't really like carrots, Mom, but I know carrots makes different soldiers in my body to broccoli, for example. That's his way of understanding that the nutrition that he gets from carrots is going to be different to the nutrition he gets from broccoli or from an apple or whatever. So he understands that different foods contribute different nutrients and vitamins and things to our body. So it's important for us to have a variety of these things. I think if food becomes an authoritarian thing or like a control thing, then it can lead to other psychological issues later on. So the sooner we educate them and introduce them and make it fun, I like to get my kids involved. They're very much in the kitchen. They enjoy grocery shopping. They run around getting the fruits and vegetables for me, and they enjoy cooking. They enjoy putting food together. They'll make their own kind of versions of different things, like let's make healthy ice lollies and, with blending fruit together and stuff like that. Yeah. With a partner, I guess it's a little bit different. You have to maybe have mutual respect for each other, but at the same time, again, I guess it's going to be a matter of how much you value something, and like nutrition will be just like any other value. It can become a contentious issue if it is like a high value for you and it's a very low value for your partner. It can become like a big area of conflict. But I guess if it's something that you explain to the other person why it's important to you, and you're thinking behind it, then it's about the other person valuing you for what you're choosing, rather than not becoming like an issue of mandatory or control. Like in our home, for example, I'm 99% a vegetarian. I eat fish occasionally, but the rest of my family isn't. They'll experiment with the food that I eat, and they'll be very curious to try it out. But I'll still buy meat for them. I still cook it for them. I just don't eat it myself.
I want to ask a question that's a bit like this. Can diets alone lead to depression, or can people who are in a depressed state be fixed through changing their diet? But maybe I'm not saying that they'll be able to be fixed alone by diet, but is it something that you've seen, or what's your experience in that area?
I think from a purely science perspective, there is a high correlation between nutrition and exercise and sleep and a person's overall emotional health when it comes to mood. So depression and anxiety. There's a lot of research that shows that like you rightly said, it's not necessarily the only factor, and it won't necessarily be like a single curative thing, but it's definitely high up there in terms of the factors that can contribute to changes in mood for the positive or the negative.
So when you're counseling someone who's one of your clients, for example, do you just go through mental exercises to get better, or do you give them practical things as well? I'm just curious to know.
Yeah. So I think it's very much a combination. My therapy is quite a combination of depth work. So trying to get this person to have more emotional insight into some of the underlying more dynamic areas that might be contributing to where they're at. But it's also very practical in the here and now base. So it's this constant dynamic that we're going through during the course of therapy, and it will depend where the person's at and when we touch on what, for example. So therapy is not necessarily my agenda, although I'm kind of holding the process for the person. I kind of have an idea of what I think could be beneficial and useful for them, but how we do that journey and where we go at different points in that journey is very dependent on where the person's at, So if they are delving very much into emotions or thinking patterns, then we'll stay there. But there might be a time when there's a bit more space to talk about other more practical things, like they might ask some questions, or they might say, I find myself comfort eating all the time, or, so it'll come up at certain points in the therapy process, and then it becomes appropriate or relevant to bring it up at that stage.
You mentioned movement or exercise and sleep.
Yeah.
Those are two pieces I'm also quite interested in. So do you, like, exercise sometimes can be bring about negative thoughts for some people, like, oh, I've got to go to the gym, or I've got to do this. Is there other forms of human activity that is just as beneficial as exercise, do you think?
I wouldn't say maybe equal benefit, but I think other activities that have a lot of merit are breathing. So here we would call it sort of like heart-focused breathing, practices like heart math, just learning how to breathe diaphragmatically, muscle relaxation exercises, and just kind of like meditation practices within what is in the mindfulness space. I'm not necessarily talking about meditation that would belong to some kind of spiritual worldview that a person might follow. I'm talking more about meditation as a mindfulness practice, visualization and things like that. It has a very positive effect just on your whole, your neurochemistry in your brain and your whole nervous system in your body, and can be very helpful with anxiety and depression as well. So that's also an activity that a person can do, but it's not a high physical activity. Because I think sometimes when a person's depressed, it's that thought of doing high energy things that might be sort of like a deterrent to them. One of the things that I always say to my patients, that with an experience like depression, sometimes it's the very thing that you need to do to get yourself out of that cycle. That's the hard thing to do, So it's like thinking that you need to exercise is hard to do, but it's the serotonin or the endorphin boost from the exercise that will actually make you feel better. But that can actually reverse that depressive process. So what we try to do is break it down into sort of like bite-sized chunks. So you might not be ready to go and do a boot camp or a CrossFit class, but maybe you can start walking for 15 minutes around your block, for example. What's doable for you within the energy level that you have, with the social support that you have, within the space that you're at, and that we kind of work on a plan of where you can start. By doing some form of movement, the positive benefits of that start to happen, and then it starts to create a new cycle. Maybe a little bit more.
I'm glad you mentioned mindfulness and meditation, because I think that it is beneficial, and there's some debate around its effectiveness, obviously, in the scientific circles. But I think there is enough evidence to show that people do get something out of it. Maybe not everyone gets something out of it, but it's not always very tangible to put your finger on how it's helping you. But I definitely believe in that, because I started breathing exercises, was it January this year? And I just started doing the Wim Hof method, which is just basically breathing in and then out and doing it 30 or 40 times and holding your breath. So it's just basic breathing exercises like that. And then
the science around that is still relatively new, but some of the research that has been emerging is sort of around the field of neurocardiology. Have you heard of neurocardiology?
No, I like the word already.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, sort of alluding to the fact that it's not only your brain that has neurons, but there's neurons around your heart.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So,
that's good.
Yeah. So that those neurons, because we traditionally tend to believe that it's the brain that controls everything in the body. The brain sends the body the information and the body responds. But what the neurons of the heart do is that they sense in your body and your heart state, and they are sending information to your brain,
Awesome.
for example.
Yeah, I love that.
So whereas it sometimes when your brain is in a very anxious, high, from a neurological point of view, it's in this like high beta, like hamster on a wheel kind of state, it's very hard for you to do rational thinking and to put certain cognitive principles in place. But so that's expecting your brain to sort itself out and then get your body to calm down, which is very difficult to do. But if you start breathing, what's happening is that your heart rate is changing. And then the information from the heart is going to the brain and saying, okay, this body is in a calm state now. This body is relaxed now. You can kind of let yourself off the hook. There's nothing that you've got to prepare for or do or work on. So that's kind of some of the science behind how breathing is actually effective, because it's changing the internal state of your body.
Yeah, putting it in a more calm state to be in a healing state, isn't it?
Yeah. So that information is going through your nervous system to your brain, basically.
I love that you mentioned that, because I've also been into, and you mentioned heart math. Is it the Heart Math Institute, isn't it?
Yes.
Where they do so much research. And I mean, we weren't going to get onto this, but I like the idea of one of the ideas of social and what they call it, social consciousness and global consciousness, where our hearts kind of connect with each other without us knowing. And it's such an amazing thing that the science is happening and revealing certain things to us, because like you say, breathing, and some people don't know this. I didn't know this a few weeks ago, but I was listening to a guy called, his name is, I think it's, Severinsen, Stig. I think his name's Stig Severinsen. He's a world freedive champion. So he held his breath for 22 minutes. And he gives some courses about how to breathe and use breathing to improve your overall well-being and such. And he mentioned that breathing actually helps you to connect to your heart. And that was the first time that someone's ever said that in those particular words, that I thought, oh, wow, that's amazing, because just the fact that you're doing controlled breathing, you concentrating on your breath will help you to connect to your heart. And having that connection that's stronger between your heart and your brain helps you in so many ways. Intuition, making better decisions, being more able to cope with stress and anxiety, which is an amazing thing. So is it quite weird to talk to your clients about this kind of stuff, because it seems a bit airy-fairy?
What I like to do, if it's a client that I think is going to be amenable to, who is asking for a lot of practical suggestions, like wants to go away and have something to do, then I actually will hook them up to my Heart Math program.
Okay.
And so without explaining too much about it, I would actually get them to maybe do just tell me a little bit about something stressful, something that recently happened that made them anxious, and then get them to start doing even 30 seconds of breathing after that. So I might just ask them to talk about something stressful for a little while, and then get them just to say, okay, we're going to just do a little bit of breathing now, just roll with this. And it's interesting for them to be able to see how their heart rate variability actually changes, because then I explain to them after, I say, see, look at what you're seeing now is your heart rate variability pattern. This is what it means. Look at what was happening while you were talking about this stressful event, and you could see what was happening in your body, in your body state. And can you see the change in what was happening when you started breathing, even though you were only breathing for 30 seconds, only breathing for a minute? And can you see the pattern and how it's changed? So I think sometimes helping people to see it, it brings the reality to them. It makes it a lot more conscious, and helps them kind of see from in a visual representation what's actually happening inside them.
It kind of validates the exercise, doesn't it?
And how possible and how doable it is for them to actually change that state.
Because it's not a hard thing to do. It's just because it's just breathing, right? Some of it's like sometimes I find it hard to get to do the breathing, because it's like it does take a bit out of me, especially the one that Wim Hof does. But I think there are other more calm ways of doing breathing, which are not as intense.
Just do very simple diaphragmatic breathing, a few seconds in and out for up to 5 minutes at a time, and then they can lengthen it if they want to. But because it's working on your nervous system, just like it becomes an involuntary reflex, you kind of tense your muscles when you're anxious, you are kind of building a memory pattern association with your nervous system, but for the opposite effect, that's more positive. And so a lot of my patients will say after a while that I got a call from work and I knew there was disaster coming. And as I was driving there, I found myself just breathing naturally, So because they're doing it so often, your body almost develops like now a new habitual response to breathe when it senses stress. So it becomes a new kind of autonomic pattern that just.
Wow, that's amazing. Did you study or go on a course to learn about this stuff?
Yes, I did do a HeartMath qualification for that in itself. Yes, so you can actually do training to become a HeartMath coach.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do the HeartMath method, just diaphragmatic breathing.
So people like to have someone to kind of be there with them, hold their hand and coach them through it, I suppose. And that's the benefit of having people like yourself, where they feel a lot more confident in doing what they're doing because you're there holding their hands, you coming as a professional and doing that. So is there great reward doing the type of job that you do?
It's awesome. It's awesome. I mean, and even if in my field, it's a little bit funny because sometimes I say to my patients, if I haven't heard from you, then I'm assuming it's good news. But sometimes I've worked with people for years on end, not because they're still stuck, but just because they just enjoy the continual process of learning and developing and growing, and they want to have their regular sessions there so that they can just reflect on what's happening in their world and make sure that they're staying on top of things. And so it's not necessarily challenge or problem focused anymore. Now it becomes just personal development and growth. And so, I mean, I have patients that I still see 4 years on or 5 years on, just because they, they've come so far, but they've got so much value out of the process that they still want to continue, and maybe for different reasons. But it's awesome to see how much work and effort they've put in, and where they started off and where they are now,
Have you seen an improvement in some of their relationships with other people and their family and stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then, they continue that learning process on their own. So a lot of my patients that are, they've realized the impact of nutrition and exercise and whatever, they do their own self-study. They have their own learning. I have had some of my patients that have gone on to study nutrition or gone on to want to kind of,
so you're more like an inspirer. You inspire people, don't you?
Get more in things, not only for their personal development, but also to share information with other people.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, but this is only my view, or the way I see it, is that it seems like the old way of psychology, where you kind of like to talk about your problems the whole time, might be being replaced with a more standing beside someone and talking about what the future might look like, how positive things can be. Have you found that psychology and psychiatrists practice has changed over the last, say, 10 years or so?
I think maybe sort of in different cultures, maybe it has. And maybe it also depends on the practitioner themselves and their worldview and how they see things. I mean, like in my context that I work in, which is in South Africa, we don't have the luxury of lots of people having loads of access or financial means to pay for loads and loads and loads of therapy just to kind of have a venting space. Some people use their sessions for that, and they want to just vent. And they want to have a container of somebody who's a good listener, just to give them empathy back and to help them with understanding just what they're going through. But I find majority of people they want you to be a good listener, and they want someone to help process things, but they also want something to go away and work with. They want some tools, they want strategies. So I often find that they come having been previously frustrated by approaches that are maybe not directive enough or don't equip them with much. So that's my personal experience. And so, like I say, it's a delicate balance, because at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you are fulfilling what the agenda of the person is who came, not your own personal agenda. So But I do find that, people want to feel like they're going away, and that the time that they're giving up from work to be there, the finances or the very, very minimal medical aid that they have or whatever, they want to feel like they're getting something tangible from it. And although they feel like, yes, they're being understood, and it's a warm and embracing emotional environment, and it's judgment-free, and it's all that wonderful, typical counseling stuff.
Yeah.
We do want more than that. That's my personal experience, and that's the way I work. And the psychiatrists that I have good relationships with, they also tend to be, of the same kind of ethos, the same kind of.
And you've been doing this for how long now? Many, many years since I've known you, at least.
Practice and this is 19 years now that I'm in practice. I started my practice in June 2000.
Wow. That's 2000. When did I meet you? Middle of 2000, maybe 2000. When was it? 2007? Can't remember now.
Very well be. Eden was born. She was born in 2007. So.
Oh, right. Yeah.
She was little.
Yeah, it was about there, wasn't it? I think it was.
Yeah, because when I was reminding her that it was you that I was speaking to tonight, she said, "Oh yes, I remember Clint and Esther. They bought me a Barbie doll for my birthday." So,
oh wow, what a memory!
So she still remember that.
And so, last question: 19 years you've been doing this. What does the next, say, 19 years look like for you? And doing what you do now, doing what you love. What's your plans for your practice over the next, say, 20 years?
Maybe to make it, I've already started moving my practice out of the four walls of the therapy room. So, I've been with some of my patients, we've been looking at how, like forest bathing as a therapy tool.
Oh,
so
wow.
I take them out and we go on hikes together. Yeah. So I have one patient in particular that when she books her appointment, she'll say, "Please, can we make this walk therapy, walk talk?" So then I know that means she wants this stuff that she wants to talk through, and she needs the environment of going to a nature reserve or something to be able to feel relaxed enough to say this stuff. And there are the sessions that she might sit in my therapy office with on the couch, and we might have a session there.
That's awesome. I love that. Being in nature is so powerful. Yeah.
Taking therapy to the gym. Yeah. So, I think with just social media and the ability to connect with people past being in the same room together, I do a lot of work through Skype. So also depending on what the person's issue is. So, if it's very emotionally laden and requires a face-to-face space, then I wouldn't do that kind of thing over Skype, because sometimes personal contact is important. But I think the more wellness type of psychology and the more mental health and well-being and just building our resilience, just to be people that can be more emotionally healthy and well in general is kind of the kind of psychology I'd like to get more and more involved in, not just working on preventative, just working on treatments, like when a person's depressed, treat them, but rather how do we get to a place where we can prevent that depression to begin with.
So making more people stronger, more resilient, and in turn in helping the rest of society, isn't it? Because the more strong and resilient and loving and compassionate people we have in society, the better society will be.
Absolutely.
I think it's a good thing. Yeah. Claudette, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time out from your busy schedule. And it has been tough to nail you down because you're involved with so many different things. And if people want to get hold of you there in your area, how do they reach out to you?
They can send me an email.
Yeah. Give us your email quickly, then I'll just pop it in the description as well. But if you just read it, say it out.
So it's my full name, Claudette, at Solutions for Life, FORLIFE, Solutions for Life.co.za.
Nice. Okay, Solutions for Life. Love it.
Yeah. That's my practice name. So they can send me an email, and that might, if there's a question or a query or something that they they want to. My other spaces are currently just being upgraded. So my website and new Insta page and new Facebook page is coming soon. It's in the process of being redesigned. So
Watch this
I'm not
space.
watch this space. When it's up and running, I'll send it to you. I'll send you some links, and then you can
Great
post.
stuff. Yeah. So for some cool breathing exercises and how to breathe and connect to your heart, how to be a stronger, more resilient person, reach out to Claudette Jordan. It's been great having you on the show, and wish you all the best.
Thanks. You guys too.